Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in to today's first video. We're going to have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days. For today's first video, that's going to take us to New Year's Eve. Day 10 is the 31st of December. We'll be able to extend out beyond that with the extended GFS and ECL ensembles. They run to around a couple of weeks. And we'll have a look at the CFS-V2 at the end of the video for the next 4 weeks as well. So coming up tonight, we're going to have the CFS 6 months look ahead. So last month's CFS 6 months look ahead ended on a little bit of a cliffhanger. As I said, I wasn't sure whether we would be scrapping the CFS 6 months look ahead after this month or not. You'll find out tonight what I've decided to do with that. So have a look at that and see whether we're pulling the plug on the CFS 6 months look ahead or not. It's just for fun. It's just taking us from January through to June, so see what CFS is forecasting this evening for those 6 months. No weekend forecast today, so we're going to be doing weekend forecast on Christmas Eve, and that will cover the full Christmas period, of course. So weekend forecast sort of pushed back from today to Tuesday, so that's the reason there's no weekend forecast today. Before I do anything else, though, I'm going to say a big thank you to our latest patron and also our latest PayPal donor. So I'm going to say a big thank you to Lee Jackson. Lee Jackson has become a patron for GFS and has also given us a couple of donations through PayPal. So thank you so much, Lee, for doing that. Thank you so much for your generosity. We've got 66 patrons so far, including Lee Jackson. So a big thank you to all of our patrons, and also a big thank you to all of our PayPal donors as well. If you would like to become a patron for GFS, all you need to do is come to GFS Patreon page, sign up for a Patreon account, and then you can give an ongoing monthly donation to GFS. Alternatively, you can become a PayPal donor. And you do that by coming to GFS PayPal page and signing into your PayPal account, then you give a donation to GFS. So Patreon is kind of like an ongoing monthly donation, whereas, although you can't cancel at any time, of course, whereas PayPal is like a one-off donation. Excuse me. So a big thank you to all of our patrons. Big thank you to all of our donors. You're helping us to pay for GalesWeathervids.com and keep the content online. So as I said, big thank you to all of our patrons. Big thank you to all of our donors. And if you become a patron or a donor of GalesWeathervids, you will get a mention in videos if you want one. So let us know through your you can rather say anonymous and let us know through your donation. Otherwise you will get a mention in the videos. We'll give you a little email as well, and we'll sort of ask you how you would like your mention. So some people have chosen to have a plug for their website or business, for example. We're always happy to do that. So yeah, big thank you to all of the patrons, big thank you to all of the donors, special thank you to latest patron and PayPal donor Lee Jackson. Thank you so much, Lee, for doing that. Right, we're going to begin with the stratosphere. So this is the latest situation in terms of the temperature at 10 HPA over the North Pole. So this is from the midnight run. Actually, so this is the forecast from the GFS. So on the 29th of December, you see the GFS is still forecasting these blue and purple colours to be there over top of the pole. Those are the cold temperatures that we've got at 10 HPA. Now, if we run through the midnight GFS run, you'll see that it was going for a very significant warming of the stratosphere over Siberia. Look at that. Red colours turning up there by the 6th of January over Siberia and beginning to penetrate in towards the pole as well. That is a major sudden stratospheric warming that the midnight GFS run was forecasting in its extended range. This is a long way out. It's early January, so it's as unreliable as any other data that the GFS will be showing within this sort of days 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 time frame. But that is a very significant warming of the stratosphere that is being forecast there over Siberia by the GFS midnight run. However, the latest GFS run is a 6 o'clock run. Again, starting on the 29th of January, you'll see we've got these blue and purple colours over pole again. So as we run through, you'll see, but yes, the 6 o'clock GFS run is forecasting a warming of the stratosphere, but nowhere near as intense. Nowhere near as intense with that warming over Siberia as the midnight run. So the 6 o'clock run backed away from that southern stratospheric warming over Siberia quite significantly. You see the difference in the temperature scale there. That is a proper southern stratospheric warming that we had on the midnight run. That is not a sudden stratospheric warming on the 6 o'clock run. It's quite a significant warming of the stratosphere, but it's not a sudden stratospheric warming. So, as you'd expect within this sort of time frame, we're talking about beyond 10 days away, you would expect a lot of chopping and changing. We was here, of course, early in December, when the GFS in its extended range was playing around with a sudden stratospheric warming for sort of early December, first week of December. It didn't come to anything. And here we go again, the GFS in its extended range is playing around with a sudden stratospheric warming over Siberia through early January, but it's far too early to have any sort of confidence about it at the moment. So we just need to wait and see really whether this is developed further by the GFS, and whether, crucially, if it is developed further by the extended GFS, whether it starts to get into the more reliable time frame, as the early December warming of the stratosphere never did. The early December stratospheric warming that the GFS was playing around with never got within a week away, within 10 days away. So we'll just have to keep an eye on it. As you go further on into winter, as I explained, as you go further on into the winter, you increase the chance of a warming of the stratosphere, a sudden stratospheric warming. They are more common the later into winter you go. So January would be a much more typical month to get this compared to December, and then February will be even more typical to get a sudden stratospheric warming compared to January. If I mean, the later into winter you go, the more sort of frequent they become on average. So we shall see. Anyway, we'll be keeping a close eye on that over the next few days, I'm sure. Right, these are the 500 millibar high anomaly flowcharts from the Penn State University for the next week to 10 days. We've got the ECMWF here on the top, and the GFS, which we'll have a look at in a moment, is on the bottom. So 500 millibars is an area in the atmosphere. High pressure and low pressure are being moved around by the jet stream running above. Red extrapolates high pressure and blue extrapolates to low pressure. These are the mean flowcharts for the week to 10-day time frame. That takes us to New Year's Eve. Day 10 is the 31st of December. So you can see that the ECM has this large area of above average height centred over and to the south of the UK. That's a large area of high pressure sitting across the west of Europe and generally centred somewhere around France or the Bay of Biscay. Low pressure is in the Atlantic, and the jet stream is doing something a little bit like that. So the jet stream is rising north around the ridge. We're under the ridge of high pressure, and that's giving us a lot of dry weather. So yes, we see an end to the deluge there, we dry out, but it turns very mild. That could be really, really mild as we move up towards the new year, as we drag up these long fetched southwesterly winds and pump them into Western Europe. And of course that warm air, mild air aloft, is what pumps up this area of high pressure sitting over France, Spain and the Bay of Biscay. So that's a classic situation to turn very mild sometime between Christmas and New Year, or running up to the New Year. The GFS is very similar. So we're in agreement, finally. The GFS and the ECM are in agreement. We've got a high pressure again covering west of Europe. Low pressure is in the middle of the Atlantic. The flow and the jet does something a bit like that. So on the mild side of the jet stream, we're under that area of high pressure. And yes, we are bringing the air up from the Azores and Canary Islands and Madeira, those sort of areas in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, dragging up the air from quite a long way south. And so it'd be very mild. But also with the high pressure we start to dry out, except one exception is possibly Western Scotland, where this kind of pattern can be very wet for Western Scotland, because you can sometimes, with these areas of low pressure out to the northwest, you can sometimes get a weather front that sort of gets stuck and trails back well into the Atlantic, and you get ripples of rain running along those weather fronts. And so for the far north and west of Scotland, this can be a very, very wet pattern, especially on the western side of high ground. Not necessarily saying it will be a very wet pattern, but it can be with this sort of pattern. But otherwise, we should start to dry out at the very least, but we will turn, if this is right, we start to bring the air up from the Azores, we will turn very mild between Christmas and New Year. These are the GFS upper air temperature and precipitation ensembles. In fact, let's just flip this over to the 6 o'clock GFS run if we can. So there we go, we've moved over to 6 o'clock GFS run. And we're at Cambridge today. This is another suggested location for this part of the video. If you'd like to have your local town or city featured within this section of the video, then all you need to do, let us know through the comments at GalsLovers or email us at galslovers@gmail.com. Or you can ask us through our Facebook and Twitter accounts. We're always happy to add your local town or city to this part of the video. So red line is the 30-year upper air temperature average for Cambridge. Excuse me. And at the moment we're quite close to average or a little bit above. The next few days actually go a bit cooler, running up towards Christmas, just go a little bit cooler around Christmas Eve to Christmas Day. Then after that, the temperatures are really taking off, really picking up with those upper air temperatures as we head towards the New Year. So it looks like we're in for another very, very mild New Year. We've had a lot of those over the past few years. It's a long, long time since we had a cold New Year. When was the last time we had a cold New Year? I'm sure someone will let me know in the comments. Possibly even 2010, but December to remember turn milder by New Year. So I suppose it would have to be New Year 2009-10, perhaps 09-10. Which, of course, is 10 years ago now. So probably a decade since we had a genuinely cold and wintry New Year. And then before that, probably have to go back to 1996-97. Remember, there was a very cold New Year, 96-97, with bitterly cold easterly winds. But they are very, very rare and quite uncommon. And also, like this year, again, we're going to be very typically mild or even very mild. Look how these upper air temperatures are lifting up. That's as we're dragging in those long-fetched southwesterly winds and pumping up the air from the Azores. There are a few colder outlier members still. These ones just here, and particularly this one there, of course, standing out. But I think the trend is very much towards turning things really mild now between Christmas and the New Year. As we get into early January, that's this period just here, a dropping temperature taking place then. So we possibly don't sustain that exceptional mild weather for all that long, maybe no more than 3 or 4 days. But I think there is a potential here to really push up the temperatures sometime around the end of December, and then going a bit cooler again as we move into the early part of January. Temperature anomalies from the 21st to 29th of December above average, especially so for England and Wales. Expect those to trend warmer in the days ahead. Precipitation anomalies. Oh, and I'm going to go back to precipitation on the ensemble, of course. So there are some rainfall spikes showing up there, but overall this looks like it's going to be a drier period, actually. It looks like we're going into a rather drier period now. So finally we're beginning to see this deluge starting to run out of steam, turning, yes, a lot milder, but also drier for most parts of the country. Right, back to the anomalies. So, above average with the temperature anomaly from the 21st to 29th of December. Expect those to trend warmer. Precipitation anomalies, drier than average, substantially so for Scotland, especially eastern parts of Scotland, near north for England and Wales. I would expect these to trend drier for all of us over the coming days, really. So that's how the 6 o'clock GFS run is looking for Christmas Eve. There's an area of low pressure that's moving in off the Atlantic, or a trough of low pressure moving in off the Atlantic. That could give us some rain for Christmas Eve. Christmas Day starts to build up a little bit of a ridge from the west. It starts to turn a bit drier, but it will be quite chilly. That's Boxing Day, keeping it mainly dry and quite chilly up to Boxing Day. This area of low pressure just here is causing all sorts of problems for Christmas Day and Boxing Day. The latest GFS run actually has that low pressure to our south, so that keeps us mostly dry, but potentially quite cold over the days of Christmas. Have this ridge here on the 27th of December. That would still be quite cold into that area of high pressure. So we do get a few days of cold weather, and could certainly be some overnight frost over this Christmas period. But by Saturday the 28th, the ridge is collapsing. So this is a week away. Ridge is collapsing next Saturday into France. We're beginning to pull up these very mild southwesterly winds, and then off we go, as we saw on the high to anomaly flow charts, into this very mild spell running up to the New Year. High pressure becomes centred somewhere over the Alps or France. We pump up these very mild, exceptionally mild, potentially southwesterly winds. In the northwest, though, there is a weather front that could bring some quite heavy rain to northern and western parts of the country just here, so it could be a very wet pattern for western parts of Scotland. Otherwise it's dry and very mild up towards the New Year. That's how we look on New Year's Eve. The ridge is just beginning to flatten off a little bit, but still mainly looking mild or very mild. And this is extended range with the 6 o'clock GFS run. Basically, we keep this strongly zonal pattern going. So the high pressure remains centred somewhere around the Bay of Biscay, France and Spain. Low pressure is all up to the north. We're continuing to have these west winds. That's about as zonal as it gets, really, for the middle part of the winter. That's how we finish up with this GFS run, just taking the high pressure out to the west a little bit, starting to turn a bit cooler from the northwest, but even then still looking generally mild or very mild, and still essentially in this pattern of zonality of strong westerlies and a zonal flow. The only difference is that we've got this ridge closer to us, which means it is drier, so we have an end to the deluge here. It is going drier through the end of December and into the early part of January, but essentially we're still in a broad westerly type pattern, which is mild or very mild. GM looks like that, so again rather showery potentially, particularly for England and Wales on Christmas Eve. Christmas Day to Boxing Day starts to build up this ridge of high pressure from the west, turning a bit drier and probably quite cold under this area of high pressure. So yes, we do get a few colder days next week, definitely, and there could be some overnight frost too, timed just nicely for Christmas. Even on Saturday the 28th of December, we're still under this area of high pressure, so the mild southwesterlies are generally kept away from us up to next Saturday. So still frosty under that ridge. And quite cold, but as going to the more extended range running towards day 10, then the GM starts to establish these west-south-westerlies as the high pressure collapses into France and Spain. That's how we look at day 10, which is the 31st of December, New Year's Eve, looking mild, potentially very mild, and also for the northwest anyway, quite wet and windy, yet another mild New Year. And then we've got the ECMWF again, rather showery on Christmas Eve into Christmas Day. High pressure gives us a drier but colder day. Boxing Day then starts to move this area of low pressure in from the southwest. So you see how we've still got headaches with this area of low pressure just here. The ECM has that moving in on sort of Christmas night to Boxing Day, bringing some outbreaks of quite heavy rain with it. That rain runs across the south with the low pressure, high pressure out to the northwest. So that's all still quite cold up to the end of next week. But next weekend, 28th, 29th of December, then we establish these long fetch southwesterlies. They start to pump the air in from the Azores. So that turns very mild as we go up towards the New Year. And that's how we look on day 10, New Year's Eve. Still closest area of high pressure, just pulling a little bit to the west, allowing some slightly cooler air to come in from the northwest perhaps. But overall, that's still generally quite mild up to New Year's Eve. This is the precipitation forecast with that ECM run from tameteo.com. So for today, we've got some rain affecting parts of the south. Otherwise, it is a slightly drier day for most of us today, but heavy rain is on the way into the south this afternoon. It gets up towards South Wales and the Midlands into this evening before it pulls away into the North Sea. Then we're left with showers for tomorrow. It could be a little bit wintry across northern and western parts of Scotland. More rain coming in there on Christmas Eve, so that gives us quite a wet start across England and Wales to Christmas Eve. Some outbreaks of quite heavy rain may push away into the southern North Sea. Wintry showers in the northwest. Otherwise, it's a drying up day on Christmas Eve and quite chilly too. Christmas Day starts mostly dry. This is 6 o'clock in the morning on Christmas Day. A few showers in the far northwest, otherwise mostly dry, but probably cold with overnight frost. And then overnight Christmas night into Boxing Day, next low pressure is in from the Atlantic. Now, there is a suggestion with the ECM of a little bit of snow with that on Christmas night into the early hours of Boxing Day, particularly through Wales and possibly parts of the Midlands. And if it gets far enough north, into northern England, very wet further south. Now, all I'd say with that is that this low pressure placement of this low is causing all sorts of problems. There's sort of a GFS that wants it around Biscay through Christmas Day to Boxing Day. So there's all sorts of problems with that area of low pressure. It probably won't be that far north, but if it was to come that far north on Christmas night, it could bring another soaking to the south. And through parts of Wales and Midlands and up to Northern England, if it was to get that far north, on the northern side of that low, there could just be a little bit of wintry potential. So one to keep an eye on. That low gets out of the way on Boxing Day, takes the rain with it, and then we go drier, of course, as we build this ridge up. But notice quite a lot of heavy rain in the northwest. That's what I was talking about. It can be a very wet pattern with these long fetch southwesterlies for the north and for the west too. But southern and southeastern parts of the country generally becoming dry. Notice how all the time the rain is just stuck across the western part of Scotland. That can be the problem with these long fetch southwesterlies. But it is a much drier pattern for southern and eastern parts of the country. That's how we look at day 10, New Year's Eve. A few wintry showers in the northwest of Scotland, otherwise reasonably dry. These are the options on the table within the ECL ensembles for day 10, which is New Year's Eve. So we have 28 members of the ECL ensembles, including the control and the operational run, that have high pressure just over or to the south of the country. Low pressure is up to the north. It's a reasonably dry and mild pattern that up to New Year. And then we have 23 members of the ECL ensembles that have the high pressure more over the top of the UK. That sends the jet stream a little bit further northwards with those. So, generally looks quite dry up to the New Year, and you have to say reasonably mild too. In 2 weeks' time, these are the options that we've got. This is for the 5th of January. 21 members of the ECL ensembles with low pressure to our north, high pressure to our west-southwest, bringing in a flat westerly flow. A little bit more unsettled with those. 19 with a mid-Atlantic ridge and a trough of low pressure to our east. That could be quite a cold pattern. And maybe a chance of some wintry weather in the north too. 11 with high pressure just out to the northwest. That's a mainly dry scenario. We could be pulling in the air a little bit from the northeast with those. So maybe a rather coldish pattern as well. So quite a bit of variation, but it looks like there's nothing particularly unsettled through the early part of the new year showing up. Finally, the CFS V2, so these are 500 millibar heights broken down into week periods. The first week period will take us from the 21st to 27th of December. The coming week has below average heights over and to west of the country. High pressure is up to the north. Looks very unsettled, doesn't it? I would suspect this is going to be a drier and more anticyclonic period than that is showing. We should be starting to transition more towards a ridge of high pressure, especially as we get towards Christmas. Week 2 is the 28th of December to the 3rd of January, above average heights and centred just to our southwest. That brings the winds in from the west or the southwest, mainly dry and very mild, potentially with that around the new year. Week 3 is the 4th to the 10th of January. The above average heights then begin to pull away into the middle of the Atlantic. Still overall quite mild. Winds in from the north, from the west, or possibly slightly northwesterly. And for the north, it may turn a little bit more unsettled as well. And then week 4 is the 11th to the 17th of January. The above average heights pulling further into the middle of the Atlantic. Trough of below average heights over Scandinavia. We send the jet stream and line the jet stream up northwest to southeast. So could be turning increasingly unsettled and a little bit cooler as well as we begin to pull the winds to the northwest. Potentially even slight hints of northerlies perhaps there. But of course that's a long way off. It's taking us into the middle of January, and more reliably, so we've still got questions about Christmas. I say more reliably, but we've still got a few questions to answer for Christmas itself. How settled will it be? How high pressure dominated will it be? The ECM's still looking very unsettled by the end of Christmas Day to Boxing Day, but I would suspect that low is going to get pushed further southwards. We shall see about that, and in which case it'll be quite a dry and also quite cold for the days of Christmas. After Christmas to New Year, increasing signs of these southwesterlies setting up as a high pressure builds over France and down to Spain. We pump up the southwesterlies, bring the air in from the Azores. We could be in for very, very mild weather between Christmas and New Year, and going up towards the New Year. And then into the early part of January, possibly going to something a little bit more unsettled and slightly cooler as well, although even then the suggestion is still to have that high pressure just to our southwest. Certainly no sign of anything desperately cold, but there could be some chilly and at least quite seasonable feeling weather for Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and potentially hanging on into Boxing Day and even the 27th of December too. Right, we'll be back later on with a CFS 6. Okay, tomorrow we've got a week to 10-day video update coming up for you, and the final Christmas update will be with you tomorrow as well. Remember, the weekend forecast has been cancelled today, and it's going to be on Tuesday on Christmas Eve. That's all for now, though, and thanks for watching.